Hello and welcome to another Spark AR tutorial video. You may notice that this looks a little bit different to the setup I normally go with. That's because I'm using my Windows machine today whilst my Mac laptop is currently in for repairs. So today we're going to be extracting parts of the face. So this is going to be a two-part video. This is part one. Part two we will actually look at the materials adding in. But today we're just going to do the initial setup. The initial setup being getting our patch editor set up correctly. So once we start getting our materials generated, the effect will start to show. So I'm going to start off by going to my patch editor. And I'm just going to scale this up so you can see it a bit easier. And we're going to be creating basically a kind of complex grouping of patches here. So please bear with these values. You may want to play about with in your own time. I'm just going to use some values here that I know kind of work. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to basically create a kind of blank face to then work from. So I'm going to start off by adding our 2D transform pack. And so like so. And I'm going to make sure our values are set to something like -8 and -4, and again we may have to tweak these values as we go through it. I'm going to keep the scale at around 18 by 20, and I'm going to keep my rotation and pivot set to 0. I'm now going to drag from my 2D transform and add a texture transform. And I'm just going to delete this connection and make sure that it's connected to the transform value of my transform patch, because we're going to be adding in an external texture to control this property. I'm now going to right click again and add a texture sampler and link this to my texture input. Then drag from my texture sampler to a multiply. And I want to make sure this is connected at the bottom input of the multiply. I'm going to right click up here and add a value and a pack. So we should have a value and a pack. So this value here will be the value to which we will control our pack values. I'm going to change my pack to a vector 4 by clicking on it and clicking on the little arrow next to the gear to change the option. So I want 4 inputs. I'm going to drag from my value to each of these inputs on my pack, so the X, Y and Z values. I'm just going to change this value to be 0.9 for now. And the last value I'm going to set to be 1. And link this to the top input on my multiply. So you should have something that looks a little bit like this at this stage. I'm going to try and keep this fairly slow so you can kind of catch up and see what's going on. Like I said, everything I do in these videos will also be available on Patreon. So we've got our mix, and I'm going to link my multiply to my top input on my mix, and I'm just going to add another mix. Like so. And I'm going to add this second mix to be linked to the top input on my first mix. Let's just check I've got this correct. I basically got this written on a piece of paper here, so I don't go too far wrong. Yeah, that seems correct so far. So I'm just going to right click and add a vertex attribute and set this to be using our texture coordinates. Then I'm going to click and drag from this and add another texture sampler. And I want to make sure that this links to the UV down here. So you should have 2 texture samplers, both of them, one of them unlinked to texture and the other one unlinked to UV at this point. I'm going to change this texture sampler here to be 0.5, and again this will all be on the Patreon for those if you get left behind. I'm going to drag from this texture sampler to the second input on the second mixer. And I'm going to drag from this first texture sampler to the second input on my first mixer. Let's just tidy this up so you can see it easier. So you should have something that resembles what you see on screen now. And then I'm going to right click down here and add an SDF ellipse. And this will be our cutout for our sort of facial region. I'm going to keep the center values the same. I'm going to just change the half size values to be roughly 0.25, so roughly half of what the default values are. I'm going to click and drag and add a smooth step, and then link this smooth step to the alpha on my second mix. And I'm just going to change this edge max value to be 0.25 for now. So there we go, this should be all set. So I'm just checking my values, so 0.9, that carries across to there, that carries across to there, and that carries across to there. This all connects up correctly. And the only thing we're missing now is our inputs and outputs. So I'm going to select all of these patches that I've created here. I'm going to right click on them and select group. So this will create a new group with all those patches in. So I could always double click on that to see that network of patches and edit them if I want to. I'm going to call this my face extract group, or something that's similar naming convention that makes sense to yourself. I'm going to right click on this, go to group properties. I'm going to add one output, and this output is going to be kept as a number. And we're going to add two inputs. So our first input we're going to rename to be texture, and it's going to be the type texture. So this will what take in our live feed of our facial features or information. And our second input is going to be our edge max value, and this will be a number, so this will keep this as is. So now we should have this one group here that if I was to click on would open this up again. So with this back open, you now notice we've got our inputs and outputs now showing up. So I want to link my texture, this pink key purple icon here, to the texture on my texture transform property here, and to my texture sampler down here. My edge max I'm going to link to my smooth step edge max patch, and I'm just going to link my mix to my output, and I'm going to go back to my main patch editor like so. So now this edge max value here we can control by using this group. Rather than having to go into that patch itself, we can always change this value, and this will control how the effect is displayed. Likewise with the texture. So to get our texture, I'm just going to add a face tracker, and this is as far as we're really going to get today. Setting this up, we won't see the eyes and mouth and duplicating those until the second part of the video. So with our face tracker selected, I'm going to go to texture extraction. This will create our face tracker texture. I'm going to drag this into my patch editor and link the RGBA to the texture on the face extract group. And just to show it working, I'm just going to add a face mesh to our face tracker. Just create a new material under properties, select this new material and choose this texture to be my face tracker texture and change its type to be flat. So now I've done this, I can click on the little arrow next to texture and link this to my face extract group like so. And now I just need to tweak my values here, and as you can see with our face mesh, you can see we've got the face kind of being blended and the eyes and mouth visible. We can always toggle those on or off by clicking on the face mesh and turning options on or off up here. And if I was to preview this on myself, so I open up the webcam, hopefully this works. We'll see. Maybe not. Maybe not, because I'm recording using the webcam. So let's just try it on another person for now and see. So you can see, depending on what I would do, is I'd take a sample of the head, in this case somewhere around the forehead, and stretch that texture across the entire facial region. And then from this, in the second part 2, we can then start to use alpha masks to take parts of the face, such as the eyes, the nose, the mouth, etc. and then duplicate those onto more face meshes and reassign parts of the face. This similar technique can also be used to take parts of the face and put them onto 2D animations or 3D objects. So there's a lot of scope to this, and we'll explore more of this in part 2. So this has been the kind of heavy lifting part. Part 2 will be more the fun, creative part. So I'll see you again soon. Remember, if you like this video, to like, comment and subscribe, and see you in part 2.